Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Bash Street Kids. The Bash Street Kids. Okay. From the Beano. Yeah? They're the boundary basher bunch. You know, I mean, these people, how do they just intrude on your lives, don't they? Let's have a look at them. Here's the Inquisitor. Let's call her Quizzy Lizzie. Now, Quizzy Lizzie, she's the sort of person who finds out all your personal details. I mean, what do you expect if you go leaving your personal information lying around at the bottom of your private drawer in your private room? Well, of course I'm going to go in and read it, aren't I? What do you expect? The problem with the Quizzy Lizzies is that they have that personal information about you and they're using it against you. Or they're spreading that information in ways that you don't want your information shared. So the Quizzy Lizzies of this world, and they can be men as well, I know this is a female avatar that I've got here, but these are the people who come into they invade your privacy. They take your information and they spread it to other people. Or they use it against you in some way, shape or form. Who else have we got? The intruder. Sleazy Steve, you know, who wants to get in your personal space. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? You know, yeah. Sleazy Steve. Now, Sleazy Steve, he is the one who invades your personal boundaries. He's the one who you feel that sort of chill of uncomfortableness about. You've got to be careful of Sleazy Steves, because they can also come across initially as quite charming. Now, you've got to beware where somebody seems to be flattering you and telling you all the things that you would like to hear, but then you find, when you get to know them better, that their intentions are not that honourable at all. Indeed, you might find, if you're involved with a Sleazy Steve, that there is a lot of what you might describe as inappropriate behaviour. You might find that behind your back, they're the person who's seeing other women. Or that even when you're with them, they're looking at other women in a very inappropriate way. They're just making you feel inadequate about who you are. Knock, knock. Who's there? Interfering cow. Moo! That's my grandchildren's favourite joke, by the way. But this is also the interrupter. We're going to call her Millie Moo. Now, Millie Moo, she's that person, or he's that person, who they won't let you finish your sentence. Whatever you start saying, oh, they know something better. Or it reminds them of an incident in their lives, and they're hijacking the conversation. Oh, do you know, there's even that wonderful person, that Zig Ziglar, he's got a name for me, the Topper. Oh, just making me feel so important. Yeah, the Topper. The Topper is someone who's always done better. They've always got more. There's always something more special about them. Now, the interrupter, that could be amongst your friendship group. And it may be that person that you constantly feel like, what's the point in even saying anything? Because I can't even get my whole story out before they've interrupted and they've taken over the conversation. Somebody at work, this kind of person may well be that person who takes all the credit for a project that perhaps you both have been working on. So that interrupter has a great deal of need for significance in his or her life. You know, it's an interesting statistic, but apparently Men are far more likely to interrupt a woman than they are a man in the workplace. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Anyway, so the interrupter we have here. The next one is the imposter. This is Sobby Sue. Now, Sobby Sue, well, Sobby Sue is the emotional blackmailer. That person who's always making you feel really guilty about something that you've done, or their needs are more important because they just sort of take over with the drama of it all. There was a client that I was working with. She was a lovely lady, Karina, and she was running her own beauty salon. And at the time that I was working with her, she said to me, do you know what? I'm absolutely losing sleep the whole time. It's actually, the whole thing is affecting my marriage. It's affecting my time at home with my children. And it's all because of this member of staff. She's, quite a young lady, and she's always late. And I speak with her about it. It doesn't seem to make any difference. And I said, well, what happens when you speak with her about it? She said, well, what happens is that when we sit down together and I start telling her about what the problems are, she just bursts into tears. And then what happens is I burst into tears. And so I end up saying to her, oh, look, it's all right, don't worry, it's okay, and here's the box of tissues. And I said to her, well, what's Sobby Sue well, she wasn't Sobby Sue, but what's Sobby Sue gaining by the tears? I said, well, she gets away with it. She gets away with it. Like suddenly the penny had dropped. And so then Karina was able to put a strategy in place that kept her on track. So the next time she spoke with Sobby Sue, and Sobby Sue burst into tears, Karina was able to maintain control. The next one we're going to look at, this is the invader. This is Domineering Dave. Now, Domineering Dave, he's the one that always knows what you should be doing, where you should be going, and what choices you should be making. Domineering Dave is the one who just takes over. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you feel. Domineering Dave is the one who is in charge. So there's a whole raft of other boundary bashers out there. So we're just looking at a few today. But the problem with the boundary bashers is that the way that they can invade your mind, the way that they can affect your physical well-being, the way that they can affect your health. And so the question is, what is it? How are they able to do this? What is it that they are doing? Well, the fact of the matter is the boundary bashers have actually got hold of the remote control on your life. They're the ones who are controlling your emotional state. They are the ones who are making the decisions about you. And you're not in charge of yourself anymore. So let's have a look at how this happens to you. Let's get the remote control and let's see if we can let's see what's on channel 1. Doubt. On channel 1 we've got doubt. What happens? You start doubting yourself. You're doubting your own judgment. You're even doubting the choices that you make. Because the way that boundary basher is intruding into your head, it means now you actually no longer trust your own judgment about anything, which is a pretty lousy place to be when you can't even trust yourself. I tell you what, let's check out what's on channel 2. Obligation. On channel 2, obligation. Now, this can go back to your conditioning. This can go back to the messages that you were given right from when you were a child. All that sense of, well, you must do this and you ought to do that. All of these things lead you to think, well, if I'm going against that, then I'm doing the wrong thing. Now, a boundary buster is really, really clever at recognizing this and making sure that you feel that sense of obligation towards them. But with obligation, what we need to do is to go in and start challenging our conditioning. We have to start challenging those messages, those supposed beliefs that we have been brought up with, and challenge the ones that we think, well, actually, that's limiting me. That's not who I am. Let's have a look what's on channel 3. Guilt. Oh, yes. That follows on immediately from obligation, doesn't it? Where we just feel so, I shouldn't have done that. And you get that sense that no matter how hard you're trying, you're just doing the wrong thing the whole time. It just, the way that you're living your life isn't really being adequate enough. You're not enough. You're not good enough. Channel 4 is blame. Now, of course, this blame, you're blaming yourself. You're thinking you're the one. You're the reason that all of these things has happened. And here's the thing with the boundary buster. They are really, really good at making you feel that it's all your fault. And then on the final channel, channel 5, we've got shame. This is the thing. When you have been infiltrated by a boundary buster, and you're blaming yourself, you're doubting yourself, you're feeling that sense of guilt about everything, you're feeling you're not doing what you should be doing, you feel really ashamed of yourself. You feel ashamed of who you are. And what happens when you do that? You stay silent. You don't speak about what has happened to you. You don't speak about what is going on. You don't report things. You expect that you won't be believed because you now think, well, it's probably my fault anyway. So this is how the boundary basher is able to continue that control over your life. So what does a boundary basher do? The boundary basher is someone who puts their needs in front of yours. Now, what that means for you is that you start to think, well, do my needs actually matter? Am I somebody who should have the right to be able to say what I need to say? You start to lessen your own importance. You start to become a lesser version of yourself. You start to take up that smaller space inside your own life. A boundary basher overrides every decision that you have made. Every choice that you have made, a boundary basher is able to override it with something that they believe is more important, or an idea that they think is the one that you should be looking at. So your choices and your freedoms are seriously limited. A boundary basher also, and this is where it can become really kind of sneaky, a boundary basher exerts their power over you, in some cases, to punish you. Now, a lot of the clients that I work with are going through divorce. They're coming through a divorce from a partner that is difficult, who is being controlling, who is being manipulative. And this is something that comes up so often, that they feel some of the decisions that are being made by that soon-to-be ex-partner are actually being done purely so that they get the power. It becomes that power battle. So it's really important to be able to recognize what it is that that boundary basher is doing. Now, the other way in which a boundary basher operates is through their expectations of you. And you can guarantee that their expectations of you are going to be unreasonable. They are going to expect, this will particularly come in if you've got a boss who's a bit of a boundary basher and who expects so much of you, demanding so much of your time, so much of the energy that you have to put in. But they never have that fairness and that balance in terms of their expectations. So it's really important that we get to know how a boundary basher operates, and not just that, that we also know exactly what we can do about it. And you might be sort of thinking to yourself, well, you know, why is it that this is something that I'm particularly interested in? So I'll tell you a little bit now about my story. I don't know whether you've ever heard that expression. You know, you can either learn things the easy way or you can learn things the hard way. And so often we find, I've actually spent my time learning something the hard way. So I'm going to take you to, it's August of 2009. And it's a hot day. It's the morning. It's quite early in the morning. And I'm in the bedroom. And I'm sitting in front of the dressing table. And as I look into the dressing table mirror, I can see a face that's looking really worn with worry and care. And the reason that that face is looking so worn with worry and care is because I'm finally summoning up the courage. I've decided I've learned this lesson the hard way too much for too long. And he's coming in the doorway. Now, conventionally, a handsome man, a George Clooney lookalike. But this is where, when you are involved with somebody who is difficult, who is manipulative, and who is controlling, you need to be cautious. Because when we have those good looks, that can be deceptive. We start to see what we hope is there, rather than recognizing exactly what is there. So he's come in and, oh my goodness, what's this? He's brought me a cup of tea. He's put the cup of tea on the dressing table in front of me. How many times has he brought me a cup of tea? Let me think. I know, exactly never. He has never brought me a cup of tea. So why, all of a sudden, am I getting a cup of tea? And look at the charming smile on his face. You know, my sister, she has rescue dogs, and she had this one dog, lovely collie dog. And we don't know his history, but he had problems with his back legs. So he couldn't sit straight. Every time he sat, he kind of had to sit like this. So whenever there was a treat available, he would try really hard to do what my sister called best sitting. That's what he's doing. He's doing his best sitting. Look, puppy dog eyes on his face. But you know when you really know you've reached the end of the road with something or someone? And I'm determined that this time he's going to leave my house. So I don't know how, but somehow I've managed to find that courage to stick to my guns on this. And now, little puppy dog face, oh my God, you have never seen such a rapid transformation in all your life. Suddenly, best sitting boundary basher has turned into the devil incarnate. You want me out of this house? I'll make sure this house is a wreck by the time I leave. I'll make sure you lose your job. Your ugly witch face will be on every paper in the land. But there's something in the way that I am staying firm on this. And he's actually turned around and walked out of the room. And I don't even know how I've managed to do that, except if I kind of look and I think, well, see, at this time, I'm head teacher of a challenging inner city primary school. So holding my presence is something that I do, dealing with difficult situations every day in my work. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's that I used. But I was also certain that this time he absolutely had to go. So it feels like, have I won something here? Have I gained something? Is this like a turning point? I don't know it, but it feels like maybe a small step. But right now I'm just trembling all over. So I can't really think about that now. And I tell you what, I'm not drinking this cup of tea. It's full of spit. When I was growing up as a child, I lived in Cardiff, and it was just a short drive for us to get to some really nice places, beaches and things like that. And all I can say is, thank God it was a short car ride, because on every trip, my brother and his friend, they'd be playing this game with each other, and it was called, What Would You Rather Die By? And they would have these horrendous ways of going to meet your maker that made your stomach churn and your blood curdle, and the other one had to say which one they would prefer. And my sister and I, we'd be just like staring out the window thinking, oh my God, when can we get out of this car? So I tell you what, you know, if you had been a little bit prone to car sickness, you would not have wanted to ride in the car with us on those days. So to come back to the story, it's now the day after Cup of Tea Gate. And I'm in the lounge, and I've got this, just the churning in the pit of my stomach, as you just would not believe. I'm standing in the bay window, I've got the sun baking in on me, and now he's come in, he's standing in the doorway. It's like you feel blocked because he's just standing there, not even coming right in the room. And I tell you what, if there was a dog show on, he'd be going for best of breed, because the puppy dog look in his eyes, you would not believe. And he's saying to me, darling, this is the thing that makes me just want to scream in his face, get out of my life, get out of my house. But I'm just standing there, I don't move, I keep absolutely rigidly still. This is what happens when you are in an abusive relationship. You learn not to let any emotion show on your face. This is how I can recognize people who are in abusive relationships. When they're with their partner, they're blank. And this is how I am. I'm absolutely blank at this point. Darling, I just come off the phone from the estate agent, and I'm afraid they won't let me take the lease on the flat unless I have someone to act as my guarantor. Oh, okay. And the someone, you know, of course that's me. Right, okay. Okay, Ruth, what would you rather die by? Would you rather die by having a boundary basher who feels that, you know, he cannot possibly now leave your house because you won't help him out? Or would you rather die by a boundary basher who has made you sign a document that says that if he defaults on his rent, you'll pay? So you know darned well he's never going to pay, and I'm going to be bled dry. But hold on a minute, hold on. There's something else going on here. Because I can feel this sensation, that words are going to come out of my mouth that are going to be, yes, of course I'll help you. What? I mean, how stupid would I be if I said that? Why is that happening? Why are these words coming up into my throat? And then I have this sensation as if a great hand has come down and reached right down in and grabbed my guts and twisted them around. And it's such a violent feeling that I don't even know how it is that I'm still standing right now. But it's also a real moment of absolute realization, where I realize, you know what? The battle's not actually with him. The battle's with me. And this was such a crucial learning at that point in time. The only person you can actually change is yourself, and the way you're reacting, the way you're responding to somebody else, even when they're manipulating and controlling you. Well, I'm pleased to say that I did not sign the piece of paper, and he did actually leave my house. But I did pay a very high price in that moment of tension inside me sparked quite a serious stress-related condition, and I did end up in hospital. I was at that point where I'm thinking, oh my God, is this it? Is this how it all ends? But I did come through it, and I did get out. But it was also that I hadn't realized how badly damaged I was. Isn't it true that sometimes it's only when you look back on something you realize how deeply something has affected you? And so as a result of that, I needed eventually, when I realized I was never going to get back to that school because they wouldn't sign me